If I had to choose one word to describe my life before everything came crashing down, it would be peaceful. Not the kind of fleeting peace you stumble upon by accident, but the kind of peace I had dreamed about since I was a little girl. The kind you read about in romance novels and secretly wonder if it even exists in real life. I had it all. A husband who loved me in every detail, kids who were small but already so strong, and a home that felt like nothing could ever break it. My husband was the type of man that if you described him out loud, people would probably say, "Men like that don't exist." But to me, he was real, thoughtful, attentive, the kind of man who noticed everything sometimes before I even said a word, even before I got pregnant. He was the one who texted me at lunch every day. "Did you eat yet? Or you feeling okay?" Sometimes he'd ask, want me to grab something on the way home. And when I finally was pregnant, that care doubled. He never let me feel like I was carrying it all on my own. I still remember those warm summer afternoons, my belly growing heavier, sunlight spilling across the living room. I'd be lying on the couch, and he'd walk in quietly, holding a glass of cold water and a plate of fruit he had already cut for me. He'd sit beside me without saying much, just gently place his hand over my stomach and smile. Moments like that made me believe I was the luckiest woman alive. But here's the thing, sometimes when you feel safest, that's exactly when the storm begins to brew. And this storm didn't come from strangers. It didn't come from outside threats. It came from inside, from family, from someone who should have been part of our joy, but instead became the root of a nightmare. It all started simply enough with a text message. The sender, Tina, my husband's younger sister. Tina had always been a complicated figure in the family. I tried, I really did, to open up to her. I wanted to believe the sister-in-law relationship could turn into something warm, something that bridged us together. And at times, I thought it might actually happen. But then there were those other moments, those sharp glances, those invisible walls that told me she didn't really want me there. Her first messages didn't seem alarming, just small talk. "Hey, what are you up to?" Or "I miss the kids." If anyone else had read them, they would have brushed it off. Nothing unusual, but I knew my husband's rhythm, his patterns of care, his transparency, and something in those texts didn't sit right with me. Usually, he would hand me his phone without hesitation, laugh about whatever his siblings said, or share little stories from their group chats. But this time, nothing. No laughter, no retelling, just silence. I didn't press, not right away. I didn't want to corner him or make him uncomfortable. But then came the day when everything shifted. He didn't call me during his lunch break. That had never happened before. I lay in bed, one hand resting on my belly, waiting for the phone to ring. It didn't. My mind started spinning. Maybe he's in a meeting. Maybe his phone died. But deep down, my chest tightened with unease. When he finally came home that evening, I knew something was wrong the moment I saw his face. His shoulders slumped, his eyes tired, his entire body carrying weight I couldn't name. He dropped his bag, sat heavily on the couch, and didn't speak. I didn't ask right away. I just brought him a glass of water. But when he finally looked at me, his eyes were bloodshot. And then, without a word, he handed me his phone. I stared at the screen. Tina's messages glared back at me. At first it was guilt-tripping. "You've forgotten about me, haven't you? Doesn't family matter anymore?" Then it turned mean. "She doesn't deserve you." And finally, the knife twisted. 2 miscarriages. Maybe that's the universe telling you she's not the right one. Her body can't even hold on to a baby. My heart stopped. The air around me disappeared. I thought I'd grown used to Tina's strange moods, her unpredictable digs, but this crossed a line so cruel it knocked the breath out of me. The pain of those two losses, the sleepless nights, the tears that never seemed to run out came flooding back all at once. But I didn't cry, not then. Instead, I looked at my husband. His whole body shook, his jaw clenched, his fists curled tight. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't fully grasped before. This wasn't just my pain. It was ours. He had carried those losses to, and now, his own sister had turned them into a weapon against us. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to break down. Instead, I just reached out and held his hand. He turned to me, tears pooling in his eyes, and whispered, "I'm sorry. I never thought she'd go this far." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there, listening to his steady breathing, my mind racing. Why would his sister hate me this much? Or was it even hate? Could it be something deeper, darker? I didn't have an answer. All I knew was this: the peace I once held so tightly had cracked wide open, and from that moment forward, there was no going back to the simple happiness of midday calls, soft laughter, or gentle hands resting on my belly. The storm had officially begun. I'm not the type to suspect people easily, especially family. To me, my husband's family was my family too, sure. There were differences, but in the end we shared a home and blood ties. So when Tina's first messages started appearing, I didn't raise an eyebrow at all. "Are you okay? Has he been too busy to pay attention to you lately?" That was the first message she sent one evening. I was sitting on the sofa, one hand on my belly, listening to our baby's heartbeat on the little handheld Doppler my husband had bought to reassure me. When the phone buzzed and Tina's name lit up the screen, I smiled for a moment. Truth be told, Tina and I were never very close, but we weren't enemies either. She was a few years younger than me, with bright eyes and a radiant smile, though she tended to keep to herself. I always thought of her as just a regular sister-in-law. I answered simply, "I'm fine, thank you. He's taking very good care of me." I didn't think much of it, set the phone aside, and went back to talking with my husband. But only a few minutes later, Tina texted again. "He really is wonderful. I honestly admire him." "You're very lucky." I paused. The compliment sounded normal enough, but something about the way she phrased it felt off. I typed back, "Yes, I know I'm lucky. Thank you," and tried to shake it off. After that, Tina's messages became more frequent. She stopped with small talk and started sharing little memories about my husband, about her brother. Back then, he used to drive me to school, always worried I might be hungry. I remember feeling so protected by him. Reading messages like that made me uncomfortable. Maybe they were innocent memories, but her constant comparisons, her past with him versus my present, stirred a vague unease in me. One evening, I was folding laundry while my husband was in the shower. His phone sat on the table and lit up with a message from Tina. I glanced over and saw, "I miss those days. I wish things were still the same." I froze. My heart seemed to stop for a few seconds. My head spun as I tried to convince myself it was just idle nostalgia, while a part of me felt something crossing a line. When he came out, I couldn't hold back. I pointed at his phone. "Why is Tina texting him like that?" I asked. He looked surprised for a moment, then sighed. "You're overthinking." Tina's, just remembering the past. It's nothing, he said, calmly placing a hand on my shoulder to reassure me. I nodded, but inside, I wasn't reassured. From that day on, I watched more closely. I noticed the way Tina looked at her brother at family gatherings. Her eyes gave off something that wasn't sisterly. When he laughed, she followed his every move with an almost mesmerized look. When he cared for me, she fell silent, a flicker of what looked like jealousy crossing her face. Once, at a family dinner, I was talking about baby names, and Tina suddenly chimed in with a smile. Whatever name. As long as he looks like him, handsome and amazing, then it's fine. Everyone laughed, but my smile felt forced. I glanced at her and saw she wasn't looking at the baby in my belly. She was staring straight at my husband with a strange expression. I began to be frightened. Not that I thought she would act immediately, but frightened of that vague, growing feeling inside this young woman aimed at my husband. That night in his arms, I couldn't sleep. I whispered, "Honey, I feel like Tina isn't normal. I see her looks, the way she talks." He held me tighter and said gently, "Don't worry so much. Maybe she's just sensitive. He's your husband, and he will always be your husband." His words were sweet and temporarily calmed me, but the unease inside never went away. In the following days, Tina messaged even more. She'd often ask, "Where are you? Are you free?" And if I answered for my husband, she'd just reply briefly, "Oh, okay." Once, when I picked up his phone to order food, a message came in. "If one day I tell you something honest, would you hate me?" I went numb. That question kept spinning in my head. Tell you something honest about what? I didn't dare imagine, but my gut warned me this wasn't just my imagination. A vague fear began to form inside me. If what I suspected was true, could this family's happiness, our marriage, survive? Since that haunting text, "If one day I tell you the truth, would you hate me?" I've been living through long, heavy days, as if a boulder were constantly pressing down on my chest. I couldn't find peace, even in my own home anymore. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart ached with anxiety, fearing another message from Tina, another cryptic remark I didn't have the courage to read. Yet Tina acted as if nothing had happened. She still came over for the most natural reasons, bringing food for me because I was pregnant, stopping by to play with the kids, or sometimes just saying she was passing by and thought she'd drop in. At first, I thought maybe I was overreacting. Pregnant women are often sensitive, prone to overthink. But as days passed, the small incidents began to form a bigger, frightening picture. That picture truly scared me. Every time I stepped out of my room, or rested in the bedroom, I would hear Tina talking to my husband. They recalled old memories, ice cream outings as kids, family trips to the beach, times he drove her to school. The way she whispered, the soft chuckles, everything carried a different tone, no longer just innocent recollection. It felt like a reminder that she had always kept him in her heart, never letting go. Once I overheard her whisper, "You always protect me." I wish everything could still be like before. Then silence. I didn't hear his reply, but silence can sometimes hurt more than words. I lay on the bed, heart racing, hands cold as ice. In my mind, a vivid fear began to form. Tina was genuinely in love with him, and I, his wife, couldn't control it. I decided I had to confront it. One evening, after Tina left, I turned to my husband and asked bluntly, "Don't you think your sister is crossing a line?" He flinched for a moment, then tried to reassure me. "Sweetheart, Tina's just lonely. She doesn't have a family yet, isn't settled, so she clings to me. Don't overthink it. I bit my lip. I wanted to believe him. I truly did. But deep down, another voice whispered, "No, this isn't just ordinary loneliness. This is obsession." Everything exploded one rainy night. I remember clearly it was just past 9. My husband ran out to grab some late-night snacks because I was craving them. I sat in the living room, hugging a pillow, tired but waiting for him. Suddenly, the door opened and Tina walked in. I was shocked. "Why are you here at this hour?" I asked. She smiled, holding a bag of pastries. "I thought you'd like these. Eat a little to have energy." She set the bag carefully on the table and sat across from me. The house fell silent. Outside, rain pelted the roof, but inside, it was just the two of us, our eyes locked. I felt a strange tension, as if something was about to happen. After a moment, Tina looked up, her eyes glinting strangely. "Have you ever thought that someone else could love him as much as you do?" I froze. My heart stopped. I stammered, "You? What are you talking about?" Tina took a deep breath, her voice trembling but resolute. "I love him. I have for a very long time. Even before you met him. I tried to bury it, but I can't anymore." I was stunned. My ears rang. My heart pounded so hard I could hear every beat. I had never imagined this scenario. Hearing my sister-in-law confess that she loved my husband, Tina. "Do you even realize what you're saying? Do you understand the consequences?" I asked, trembling. She was teary-eyed but didn't turn away. I know it's wrong. But every time I see him taking care of you, paying attention to you, it feels like thousands of knives stabbing my heart. I'm jealous of you. I wish I were the one with him, not you." I jumped up, hands shaking. I wanted to scream, to throw her out immediately. But my throat tightened, only hot tears streamed down my face. Just then, the door opened. My husband walked in, carrying the snack bag. He froze at the sight before him. I stood there, stunned and crying, while Tina turned away, hurriedly wiping her eyes. "What's going on?" he asked, panic in his voice. No one answered. Tina suddenly dashed out the door, disappearing into the rainy night. It was just the two of us left in the room, the air thick and suffocating. He set down the bag and ran to me. "Tell me, what just happened?" I sobbed, words breaking out. "Your sister. She loves you. She just told me." His face went pale. His eyes widened, then slowly dropped, as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. He slumped into the chair, hands on his head. After a long moment, he looked up, voice choked. "I had no idea. I swear, I never knew she felt this way." He held my hand tightly, palms sweaty. "It's only you, always just you. You and our child. Please, trust me." I cried uncontrollably. I wanted to believe him, truly wanted to, but my heart was shattered. I knew he hadn't done anything wrong, but knowing someone in our own family harbored such twisted feelings for him had already torn me apart inside. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there listening to his steady breathing beside me, but I felt distant. I turned to look at that familiar face, the one I had once trusted completely, now shadowed by that confession. Outside, the rain fell relentlessly, like thousands of my tears, falling with no one to catch them. I knew from that day forward, our lives would never be the same again. After that rainy night, The atmosphere in our home was never the same. Even though my husband tried to reassure me, tried to protect me, I still felt an invisible distance growing between us. Night after night, I dreamt of Tina's face, her eyes shimmering with tears, her trembling voice, "I've loved him." For a very long time, that sentence echoed endlessly in my mind, like a haunting melody I couldn't stop at first. I hoped Tina would step back on her own, that she would realize she had gone too far. But I was wrong. Completely wrong. Just a few days later, Tina showed up at our doorstep again, this time carrying an enormous bouquet of flowers. Along with an explanation, "I want to apologize for what I said the other day. I know I spoke out of turn, so I brought flowers to make amends." I opened the door and stood firmly on the porch. My heart was pounding, but I refused to show any weakness. "Tina, you can't just come here whenever you want. I think it's best if you keep your distance." She froze for a moment, her face showing a flicker of hurt, but then she forced a small smile. "Do you think I'm a threat? I just want to be close to family. I won't say anything anymore, I promise." I bit my lip, unsure how to respond. Luckily, my husband had just arrived. Seeing Tina at the door, his face darkened. "Tina, I think you should leave. Don't come here for the time being." His words stunned me. He had never spoken to his sister so firmly before. Tina stood frozen for a few seconds, then forced a smile. "Do you really want me out of your life? I want you to have your own life. I have a family, a wife, and a child. You need to respect that," he replied, voice resolute. I saw Tina's expression change. It was no longer weakness, but something sharp, dangerous. She didn't say another word, placed the flowers on the step, and turned away. That night, we sat down to discuss the situation. I shivered as I spoke. "Honey, I'm scared. Scared that Tina might do something reckless." He sighed, pulling me into his arms. "I know, but I can't let you and our child bear this pressure any longer. I'll talk to my parents." The next day, he called his parents. I sat beside him, listening. His voice was firm as he recounted everything. The messages, the confession, and Tina showing up at our house. I heard my mother-in-law remain silent for a long time, then choke up. "Oh my. We thought she had overcome this. Your father and I took her to therapy many times. She promised she was okay. How could this happen?" My father-in-law spoke with a heavy tone. "She's not okay. We've hidden it for too long. She needs treatment again, more serious this time." Hearing that, I felt both relief and fear. Relief because at least my in-laws acknowledged the truth, but fear because it meant Tina's situation was worse than I had imagined. But things didn't stop there. About a week later, while I was resting in the room, the house phone rang loudly. I went out and picked it up. A familiar voice spoke. "Why did you steal him from me?" I froze. It was Tina. Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from anger. "Tina, you need to stop. You need to see a doctor," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "No, I don't need a doctor. I need him. You're the one interfering. If it weren't for you, he would be mine." I shook with fear, gripping the receiver tightly. Before I could respond, my husband stepped in from outside and snatched the phone. His voice was firm and sharp. "Tina, that's enough. I don't want to hear anything else. From now on, do not call here again." He slammed the phone down. I noticed his hands shaking, eyes reddened. He sank into a chair, burying his head in his hands. I can't believe my own sister would say something like that. I wrapped my arms around him, but my heart was heavy with unease. It felt like living with a ticking time bomb. Just one small trigger, and everything could explode then. What I feared most actually happened. One afternoon, my husband was still at work. I was home with the kids when there was a furious pounding at the door. I peeked through the crack. It was Tina. Her face was pale, eyes dark and sunken, hair a mess. I didn't dare open the door. Open the door. You can't keep him locked in there forever, she screamed. I trembled, clutching my child tightly. My heart raced, cold sweat pouring down. I immediately called my husband, voice frantic. Come home now. Tina's at the door, she's screaming. He told me to lock the door, not to open it. Meanwhile, Tina continued pounding, crying and laughing, her voice echoing through the neighborhood. I heard neighbors start whispering, some peeking out to watch. It wasn't until my husband sped home that Tina finally left. But before she disappeared, she shouted, "You'll regret this. I love him more than anyone." The neighbors looked at me with pity. Some even came close to whisper, "That girl. There's something wrong with her. You need to be careful." That night, we sat down to make a plan. My husband decided, I'm going to change my phone number, install cameras, and tell our parents that Tina is no longer allowed near our house. This is no longer just a family issue, it's about the safety of you and our children. I looked at him and saw the pain in his eyes. Even though he was firm, I knew his heart was bleeding. After all, Tina was still his sister. But he had no other choice, and I understood this was only the beginning of a much larger storm. I still remember that afternoon vividly. The sky was grey, clouds thick as if trying to swallow the last light of the day. I sat in the living room, eyes tired, watching the door where my husband still hadn't come through. The phone on the table buzzed, and my heart jumped reflexively. But it wasn't him. It was Tina. Her message froze me in place. I'm sorry, but he told me some things that I think you should know. I stared at the screen, each word tearing at my heart. Before I could reply, another message appeared. He said you're not the same as before, that you only think of the kids and no longer care about him. I don't want to hurt you, but I think you deserve to know the truth. My hands shook as I tried to type, but I couldn't. My thoughts were in chaos, tangled between anger, hurt, and a creeping sense of confusion. Did my husband really say that? The man who once swore to love me unconditionally, now complaining to his sister that I was no longer the woman he loved. The sound of the door opening jolted me out of my daze. He stepped in, looking exhausted but forcing a smile when he saw me. I stood, eyes fixed on him, trying to find some explanation in his gaze. Do you have something to tell me? My voice hoarse. He paused for a moment, then shook his head. No, just a bit tired today. What's up? I held up the phone, Tina's messages still on the screen. He glanced at it, then unconsciously turned his face away. That gesture felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I stepped closer, voice trembling but determined. Did you really say that? Did you go to your sister to complain about us? Did you tell her I no longer care about you, that I've changed? The air in the room felt thick and suffocating. He was silent for a long time, then finally muttered, I just said it in frustration. You know me, I didn't mean it. But his eyes wouldn't meet mine. I smiled bitterly, a smile that even I found strange. In frustration, who do you pick to vent to? Your sister? The one who never liked me in the first place. He snapped up, voice sharp. You always think badly of Tina. Do you know how much she's helped me? Do you know how much she cares for me while you only think about the kids and ignore me? I was speechless. For the first time, he spoke those words directly, without beating around the bush. I looked at him, heart aching beyond words. All my sacrifices, sleepless nights for the kids, enduring loneliness just to let him focus on work. Now they were my guilt in his eyes. I didn't cry. I just sank into the chair, feeling my world collapse. Tina had won already. She didn't have to do much, just a few sweet words. Her presence at the right moment, and she had turned my husband away from me. In the days that followed, the atmosphere at home became suffocatingly cold. He still fulfilled his duties as a father, still held the kids, still drove them to school, but between us, an invisible wall had risen tall, thick, and impossible to cross. At night, he often sat in the living room, quietly texting. I didn't even need to guess who was on the other end. I started to feel a growing fear. It wasn't anger or jealousy anymore, it was fear. Fear of losing everything. Fear that one day he would look me in the eyes and say it was over. And the more afraid I was, the more helpless I felt. Because I knew that love, once cracked, rarely heals the same way. One evening, as I tidied the living room, I accidentally saw his phone left carelessly on the table. The screen lit up with a message. I know how tired you are. I'm here, always. Different from her. I couldn't hold back anymore. Tears streamed down my face, soaking it completely. I ran to the bedroom, slammed the door, and clutched my chest as if trying to hold my heart together. That night, I didn't sleep. I thought about our marriage, our years of happiness, the rushed kisses before work, the embraces after long days, the nights we spent talking about the future. All of it was now just memories. And memories, I realized, aren't enough to hold someone whose heart has drifted elsewhere. The next morning, I watched him care for the children and felt an unbearable pain. In some ways, he was still my husband, still the father of my children. But in his eyes, I was no longer the only one. I knew, from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. The crack was exposed, and it would only grow wider until everything finally collapsed. I used to think that once a marriage had weathered enough storms, we would be stronger than anyone else. But the harsh truth is that nothing is guaranteed. What we call love, once cracked, can turn even the sweetest memories into sharp, painful cuts. After that night of discovering the messages, I seemed to become a different person. I spoke less, grew colder, and carried an invisible weight on my chest at all times. During the day, I still cared for the kids and managed my responsibilities. But every time I looked at my husband, I remembered those words. Remembered the way he avoided my gaze when I asked him directly. He, on the other hand, tried to act normal. He still asked if I needed anything when he went to the store, helped around the house, held the kids, and told them funny stories. But I knew it was only on the surface. At night, he no longer slept beside me like before, often using the excuse of being too tired to sleep on the sofa. I lay in the cold bedroom, staring at the empty space next to me, my heart breaking into pieces. One evening, I decided I could no longer endure it. As he settled onto the sofa, I approached and stood before him. "We need to talk," I said bluntly, leaving no room for evasion. He looked up, slightly surprised, then averted his gaze. "Talk about what?" "There's nothing to talk about." I sat down, staring him in the eyes. "I can't take it anymore. I want to know, finally, what's going on between you and Tina. Can you be honest?" The room fell into a silence so thick I could hear the ticking of the clock. He clenched his hands tightly and sighed. "You always think there's something between Tina and me. But you're wrong. It's just, she understands me, while you don't." I froze. Those words hurt even more than an affair would. I looked at him, my voice catching. "What are you saying? I've been by your side all these years, sacrificed everything for this family. And now you're telling me I don't understand you." He stood up, his voice rising. "Yes, you don't understand me. You only think about the kids, work, responsibilities. You've forgotten what I need, how I feel. While Tina, she listens. She knows when I'm tired, when I need comfort. Do you know how precious that feeling is to me?" I sat there, stunned, unable to believe what I was hearing. He was comparing me to Tina, his own sister. I forced a bitter laugh. "Do you hear yourself? The person you're talking about is your sister. And you're using her as an excuse to trample over me, over our marriage." He was silent, but in his eyes, I could see the conflict. I knew he still loved me, but at the same time, I knew a part of his heart had been taken by Tina, and that was a cruel truth I couldn't deny. After that conversation, our relationship grew increasingly tense. Family dinners became heavy, and the children sensed the change. They asked, "Mum, why doesn't Dad tell bedtime stories anymore?" I choked back tears, simply brushing their hair and forcing a smile. How could I explain to them that their father was slowly drifting away from the family? Meanwhile, Tina grew bolder. She frequently appeared at our home, claiming she was helping with the kids or visiting the grandchildren. But I knew her true intentions. Every time she stepped inside, her eyes would glance at my husband without shame, and he showed no sign of discomfort. On the contrary, he often smiled, welcoming her presence as if it were natural one day. As I was setting the table, Tina casually said, "He told me he's so tired. I just wish you could share more with him." The words seemed innocent, but they carried a provocative undertone. I turned to her, staring directly. "Never interfere in my relationship with my husband. Do you understand?" Tina gave a faint smile, unbothered. "I just want what's best for him. If you can do that, I wouldn't need to show up." Her words nearly drove me insane, but I didn't want to make a scene in front of the kids. So I bit my lip and swallowed my anger. That night, I cried like never before. I felt cornered. I was not only losing my husband, but also battling a cunning third party, someone who was part of our family. I wondered, could anything be more cruel? In the following days, I began contemplating whether I should walk away. Part of me wanted to let go, letting my husband and Tina face whatever they considered love. But another part refused to give up. I had the kids, the family. There were nights I stayed awake, not because the kids were crying, nor because of work, but because my heart could not find peace. The feeling that my husband was slowly slipping away, stepping into a world where I no longer existed, drove me almost insane. I tried to convince myself that he was just lost, that eventually he would come back. But each day, things spiraled further out of control. That day, Tina came over. She entered with a gift bag in hand, smiling as if she were the most cherished person in the world. I knew very well she never came for the kids or for me. And sure enough, just minutes after arriving, she sat next to my husband, asking about work, health, chatting lightly, laughing softly. My husband didn't avoid her. In fact, he responded comfortably, his eyes sparkling with a kind of emotion I hadn't seen in months. I tried to stay calm, continuing to tidy up in the kitchen, but my heart raced, my ears catching every single word. Every time Tina laughed, it felt like my chest was being crushed. I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped into the living room, looking straight at them. "Tina, can you step outside for a moment and talk to me?" She seemed surprised for a moment, then nodded and followed me to the porch. I closed the door, took a deep breath, and spoke slowly. "I've had enough. What do you want from this family? What do you want from my husband?" Tina looked at me, a faint smile on her lips. "Are you seriously asking? I want him. I want a man who listens, who shares. Honestly, you've neglected him for too long." I was stunned. Her blunt words hit me like a slap. I trembled. "Do you even know who he is? He's your brother. Don't you realize that?" Tina shrugged lightly. "Blood doesn't control feelings. He needs me, and I need him. As for you, you're just standing in the way, stopping him from being happy." I wanted to scream, to hit her, to wake her up. But I held back, knowing if I lost control, I'd lose everything. I turned and went back inside, my heart racing, my mind spinning. Life felt unrecognizable. That night, I confronted my husband. I recounted every word Tina had said, hoping he would react, be angry, side with me. But he didn't. He remained silent, his eyes darkened. After a long pause, he finally said, "You're right. She has wrong feelings, but I can't turn my back on her. She's my sister. She has no one else." I burst into tears. "And what about me? And the kids? Are we nothing in your eyes?" He ran his hand over his forehead, his voice weary. "I'm not saying that. I just don't know what to do. If I leave her alone, she might do something reckless. I don't want to carry that guilt." At that moment, I realized he didn't love Tina, not, at least in the way she might hope. But he was trapped by guilt, by responsibility, by childhood memories. And that blinded him, keeping him from seeing the pain I was enduring. The next day, I received a strange text from an unknown number. When I opened it, my heart stopped. It was a photo of my husband and Tina, sitting close in a cafe, laughing intimately. The text had only 4 words. They belong together. I felt the world collapse around me. I wanted to throw the phone, yet I couldn't stop staring at the image. 1,000 questions raced through my mind. How far had they gone? Were they just talking, or was there more? That evening, when my husband came home, I showed him the photo. "Explain this," I demanded, my voice sharp. He looked at the picture, then at me. His face paled for a moment, but he quickly regained composure. "I only met her to talk. I wanted to advise her to stop. Nothing else happened. I searched his eyes for truth, but all I found was evasion. I started to cry, yelling, 'Do you realize what you're doing? You're pushing me to the brink of madness. Do you even see me as your wife anymore?' He remained silent. That silence pierced my heart like a knife. After that day, I stopped trying to hold on. I poured all my attention into the kids and my work, avoiding confrontation with my husband. But deep inside, I knew a storm was brewing, and it came faster than I expected. One weekend afternoon, while I was playing with the kids in the yard, Tina suddenly appeared. She walked straight to my husband, wrapping him in a hug right in front of me and the children. I froze. My kids were shocked, not understanding what was happening. I rushed over, yanking Tina's hands away, shouting, "Are you out of your mind? You can't do this in front of my children." Tina laughed, her eyes glowing with madness. "You can't hide it forever. He needs me. Sooner or later, he'll leave you anyway." My body shook, my heart about to explode. My children cried, while my husband stood frozen, unsure what to do. That was the moment I realized my family had truly fallen apart. There was no hiding it anymore, no room for hope. That night, I packed my things, took the kids, and went to my mother's house. I didn't say a word to my husband, because I knew, at this point, words were meaningless. In my mind, there was only one thought: I must protect my children and myself. On the first day I left our shared home, I sat quietly in my old room at my mother's house, staring at the ceiling and feeling like everything was part of a broken dream. I had once believed I would spend my whole life with him, building a warm home for our children. Yet in just a few months, it all turned to ashes. My child slept soundly beside me, their innocent face still rosy, completely unaware that their mother's world was collapsing. I pulled the blanket over them, took a deep breath, and silently promised myself, I can't fall apart. I have to stay strong for my child. My mother didn't ask much. She simply looked at me, her eyes full of both pity and worry. She understood I needed time. That evening, she quietly brought a bowl of hot porridge and placed it in front of me. "Eat, honey. You need strength to take care of the kids." Even that simple gesture made tears roll down my cheeks. The following days, I lived like a shadow. During the day, I cared for my child. At night, I lay awake. I tried to hide my despair, not wanting them to see me crumble. But sometimes they would look up and ask, "Mum, when will Dad come home?" That question pierced my heart like a knife. I could only hold them close and whisper, "He's there. He's just busy." One afternoon, when I had just picked up my child from school, I saw my husband waiting at the gate of my mother's house. He looked worn out, his eyes sunken from lack of sleep. When he saw me, he stepped forward, his voice hoarse. "Can we talk?" I held my child tightly, responding coldly, "There's nothing to talk about." He lowered his head, trying to stay calm. "I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. But I don't want to lose you, lose our child. I forced a bitter laugh. You lost us a long time ago. You just refused to admit it. I pulled my child inside, leaving him standing there in the late afternoon yard. But no matter how strong I tried to be, my heart still trembled. Part of me still loved him, still remembered the happy months we had shared. I wondered, could I forgive? Could love be strong enough to heal this deep wound? That night, I didn't sleep. I sat before the mirror, staring at my hollowed-out face. When had I lost myself? I had once been a lively, vibrant woman, but now I felt like a shell. I realized that if I continued like this, I wouldn't be able to be a support for my child. I needed to find myself again. And so I began. I signed up for morning yoga classes, leaving my child with my mother. At first, my body was stiff, each pose a struggle. But after a few weeks, I gradually relaxed, breathing more deeply, my mind finding calm. Each drop of sweat on the studio floor carried away a little of the tension weighing on me. I also returned to reading, a habit I had loved but abandoned because of busyness. Late at night, after my child slept, I opened a novel and let the pages transport me far from the pain of the present. I realized that life still held small joys if I learned to grasp them. Occasionally, old friends invited me out for coffee. At first I refused, but then I realized I needed those conversations. Listening to them talk about work, about love, I suddenly felt a sense of relief. I was no longer the betrayed, pitiful woman. I was still myself, still able to smile, still able to live. My husband reached out multiple times. He sent messages, called, even wrote letters to apologize. But I didn't respond. I knew I needed distance, time to think clearly. Returning too soon would only repeat the same cycle. One day Tina unexpectedly sent me a message. It was just a few words. You won't keep him. I looked at the screen, my heart stirring, but instead of anger, I smiled. I realized I no longer trembled at her provocations. I was strong enough to prevent her from controlling my emotions. I didn't reply. I deleted the message and returned to my unfinished tasks. For the first time in months, I felt truly in control of my life. Time passed. The emotional wound was still there, but it no longer bled. I learned to find joy in small things. My child's laughter, a brilliant sunset, a warm cup of tea with a favorite book. I realized that happiness doesn't always come from a man. Happiness comes from taking care of yourself and loving yourself. I still haven't decided what to do with my marriage. Forgive or let go, both choices are difficult. But at least now, I know I am no longer weak. I can face any outcome because I have risen from the pain. And when I look at my children sleeping peacefully in my arms, I know that no matter what the future holds, I will protect them with all the strength I have left. It seemed like things were finally starting to settle down. I had regained a bit of balance in my life, focusing on caring for my children and myself. But one late autumn afternoon, Emily, my close friend who worked with my husband, asked to meet me at a small cafe at the end of the street. Her tone was so serious that I couldn't refuse. I arrived, my heart filled with suspicion. Emily sat there, her face tense, hands twisted together nervously. When she saw me, she took a deep breath and said, "There's something you need to know. I know it might hurt you, but hiding it is even more dangerous." My heart raced. I gripped my coffee cup, waiting. Emily looked me straight in the eyes and spoke clearly, word by word. "Tina is not just a normal colleague. She has previously destroyed another family at work. The man left his wife for her, But within a few months, his career and spirit were ruined. Because Tina didn't just want a relationship, she wanted power, control, total dominance. And when he couldn't handle it anymore, she left as if nothing had happened. I froze. Emily's words hit my mind like hundreds of daggers. I couldn't believe it at first, but her serious eyes told me this was no fabrication. And now, Emily continued, she's doing exactly the same thing with your husband. I've overheard some conversations. She wants him to divorce you so they can be public. The scary part is, Tina doesn't love him. She just wants to prove she can take everything from someone else. To her, this is a game. I gripped the table, feeling a cold shiver run through my body. Everything I had suspected, everything I had feared, was now clear. But what hurt the most was that the man I loved had willingly walked into that trap, becoming part of her cruel game. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice trembling. Emily was silent for a moment, then replied, because I don't want to see you destroyed like the woman before you, and I don't want him falling into the hands of someone like her. I know he still loves you, but he's weak, easily drawn in. If you don't act decisively, she will win. That night, I returned to my mother's house, my mind a storm. I watched my children playing, their innocent laughter piercing my heart. I couldn't let someone like Tina destroy my family just for a selfish game. Yet at the same time, I wasn't sure I had enough trust left to pull my husband back. A few days later, he came to see me. This time, I didn't avoid him. I let him in, sent the children to another room, and asked straight, tell me, how far have you and Tina gone? He lowered his head, silent for a long time. Finally, he sighed heavily. I lost my way. I went farther than a husband should. But I swear to you, I have never stopped loving you, Tina. She just knows how to manipulate. I thought I was strong, but I was too weak. And when I realized it, everything had spiraled out of control. Tears welled up in my eyes. I felt both pain and anger, but I also saw a raw truth. He wasn't entirely a cold-blooded traitor. He was just a weak man, unable to resist temptation, and that made me feel even more desperate. Why? I choked out. Why didn't you think of me, of the children? Why did you let someone like her control you? He knelt, taking my hands. I'm sorry. I have no excuses, but I want to make it right. Please. Give me a chance. I looked at him, my heart filled with conflict. Part of me wanted to push him out of my life forever, but another part still loved him, still wanted to believe we could save this. At that moment, his phone rang. Tina's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it, then looked up and said coldly, "Go ahead." Right in front of me. He hesitated, then answered. Tina's voice came through the speaker suite, seductive but laced with mockery. "Have you told her yet? When will you divorce so we can be public? Don't keep me waiting." I saw my husband's face go pale. He clenched the phone and immediately hung up. He looked at me, trembling. See? She just wants to destroy everything. I was foolish to think it was love. I froze. For the first time, I clearly felt the fragile boundary between true love and malicious possession. Tina didn't love him. She only wanted to win, and I could no longer allow myself to be a pawn in that game. "Listen," I said firmly. "If you truly want to come back, you must cut all ties with Tina. No messages, no calls, no excuses. And you must prove it, not just with words, but with actions. If not, It's over. He nodded, eyes brimming with tears. I swear, I'll do everything to earn your trust again. But my heart was still heavy. I knew that forgiveness was easier said than done. And even if he kept his promise, would the wounds in my heart ever fully heal? That night, lying beside my children, I thought about the future. I wasn't sure which path I would take, but I knew one thing. I would no longer be the weak woman letting fate control me. This time, I would be the one in charge. I had never experienced a night as long as that one. Moonlight streamed through the window, casting a pale glow over the worn walls. My child slept soundly beside me, breathing evenly, tiny hands twitching as if dreaming a peaceful dream. Meanwhile, I tossed and turned, eyes wide open, mind swirling with unending waves of thought. For years, I had built a family with my husband, nurturing countless hopes and dreams. We once had happy days together, promising to walk through life side by side, but a single misstep had shattered it all. And now he said he wanted to come back, to make amends, to start over. Could it be possible? Could my heart trust again? The next morning, I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was pale, eyes shadowed from sleeplessness, yet my gaze had changed. In those eyes, I saw determination, a strength I had never known before. I knew it was time to make a decision. My husband arrived that afternoon. He was neatly dressed, no longer the disheveled figure from before. He stood before me, and this time, I saw resolve in his eyes. "I've cut all ties with Tina," he said. I moved my office, changed my personal number, and requested a transfer to another branch. I don't want anything related to her in my life anymore. I froze. Part of me felt relief, but another part remained wary. I had heard many promises, many apologies, yet this time he seemed genuinely changed. "You don't need to say much," I replied slowly. "What I want to see is action. If you're serious, prove it by living each day worthy of this family." He nodded. "I understand, and I will." We began again, but it was not a return to the past. Everything had changed. I was no longer the woman who only endured and sacrificed. I learned to set boundaries, to speak my needs, to protect myself. He learned to listen, to take responsibility for his actions. There were days when old wounds flared. A random advertisement on his phone, a sudden, late meeting, these moments tested me. I realized that forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's learning to live with the scars, letting them remind me of how fragile happiness can be. We attended marriage counseling. At first, I was hesitant, but I soon realized that having a neutral person to listen and guide us made it easier to open up. I spoke of my pain, my fears, and the anger I had hidden. He admitted his weakness, the emptiness that made him vulnerable. Each session was like removing a layer of thorns from our hearts. Our children were the greatest motivation. Watching them play and call for both of us, I knew I wanted to keep this home, at least for them. But not only for them, I still had love, small and fragile, but not extinguished. Time passed, slowly but surely. The wounds remained but faded. Afternoon walks together, family dinners with children's laughter, and small ordinary moments became a healing balm. One winter evening, while the family gathered by the fireplace, he suddenly held my hand. He didn't speak much, just looked at me for a long moment, then whispered, "Thank you for giving me a chance. I know I don't deserve it, but I will spend my life trying to be worthy." I smiled faintly. Perhaps I had not completely forgotten the pain, but I knew I had weathered the storm and stood firm. I was no longer the weak woman I once was. I had found myself, found my strength, and that allowed me to forgive not for him, but for me. Forgiveness, ultimately, is not a gift for someone else. It's a gift to yourself, to unburden your heart, to live in peace. That night, after the children were asleep, I stepped out onto the balcony, taking a deep breath. The sky was clear, the moon bright, cold wind brushing my skin. I closed my eyes, letting the cool air fill my chest. And for the first time in a long while, I truly felt at peace. Our marriage would never be perfect, but I knew that as long as we held hands and tried together, we could continue writing our story, a story not about betrayal, but about rising after a fall. And I smiled, softly whispering to myself, "At last I've found peace."